I've been diving deep into the application of the wheel technique lately because it's one of the most important movement concepts in my technique approach. Today, I'm going to be showing how to use it in several musical examples. In this video, you'll learn how to apply the wheel in a lot of situations and also see the benefits of it on both physical and musical levels. To summarize very briefly, the wheel technique turns side-to-side motion on the keyboard into smooth, fluid, curved arm movements. A simple scale like this becomes a pattern of down on the thumb, up on the pinky, and that turns into under, over. I showed this in scales and arpeggios in my last two videos. You may want to catch up on those first if the wheel is a new concept to you. Today I'm going to be using pieces by Mozart, Haydn, and Ravel, which contain arpeggio and scale-like passages. The new strategy that comes into play when you're dealing with a piece of music is what I call the focal point. The curved shape of the wheel needs to aim for a specific note within the group. So the arm weight is going to be moving with momentum toward a certain point in the wheel group and then away from it. I'll show what this looks like in a scale so that it's clear before we get into the musical examples. In a group of 5 notes, I'm going to aim for a note somewhere in the middle of the group. For now, I'll just pick finger 3. So I want my arm to feel like it's moving toward the finger 3 and then away from it. The way to work this in is, first of all, to start the group with momentum and stop on the note that we're using as the focal point. And when you get there, check that your arm alignment is good. You feel a connection from your fingertip to the elbow. Then you can play the full group, in this case 5 notes, with an accent on the finger 3. Then when you want to smooth it out, you minimize the accent, and it feels more like you're just curving around the note rather than landing on it. If you're playing a longer scale with several half wheels within it, then usually you just choose one focal point. It could be the E again, and then you turn the series of half wheels into a longer curve and focus on one point in the long group. In a piece of music, the strategy is going to be to locate the focal point according to the rhythm and meter of the piece. That'll mean to find the strongest beat or offbeat that's near the beginning of the wheel group. I'm going to start with a couple examples of scales and arpeggios in classical pieces where the rhythmic element is very clear so that we can find the focal point logically. Starting with Mozart's K545 C major sonata, I'm going to jump around to a few different spots. The first two are going to be about arpeggios, but they're two different arrangements of arpeggios, and that will be interesting to look at. The first one's at measure 11. The groups are coming over the keys because we're going pinky to thumb. So I'm going to make sure I get the directions right of starting up on the pinky. And then aim for the third note because that one falls on the offbeat. You can place it with an accent to get used to that. And then when you go faster, it's more like you feel a pivot in the middle of the wheel and your movement organizes around it. A few measures later at 18, there are similar arpeggios, but with a different rhythmic placement. In these ones, I'm going to aim for the second note because that's the one that falls on the offbeat. So the left hand is the D, and the right hand is the B, and then follow the same pattern. It helps you to feel continuity in the arm movements, lifting off the keys and coming back with momentum. It also helps to avoid the unwanted accents, which would be naturally you might hit the first note of each arpeggio a little stronger because you're landing on the keys. But if you aim for the second note, then you're going to go through the gesture and smooth out the entire passage. In the development, there are some more arpeggio and scale passages that we're going to look at, starting with this one. And here you would aim for the G coming up the arpeggio. The scales, it's going to be the A coming up, and then the G coming back down, the B in the left hand, and the C sharp. And you can follow that principle through the entire section. Next is Haydn's E-flat major sonata, Hoboken 16, number 49. It's the one that starts like this. Starting at measure 28, where we have this. It's a longer scale, so I'm going to find one focal point near the beginning and then use that to organize the entire scale. Focal point goes on the D, and it's a bit more tricky to get there because you're crossing over at the start of the scale, but you can use the same technique of landing with an accent and then curving around it. The same scale figure happens in a few different keys in the development, which is a good chance to try to find the same thing using different fingerings. Measure 84 is in C minor, so aiming for the E flat. Since it's a black key, you have to make sure you're high enough that you can still play down and back and land on a supported position for finger 3. A flat major is a different fingering at measure 88, but we're going to aim for the third note again. F minor is 1, 2, 3 again, leading to the focal point. But since you have a 4, then the actual group is a little different. Fast forwarding to measure 103, there's some interesting arpeggios and scales in these few measures. The arpeggio groups are going to aim for the E, and then the descending scale goes to the A flat. The right hand can feel a bit spread out here, so you have to make sure the fingers are still releasing and the hand is moving across the notes, even if it stays a little bit spread out in order to cover that range. On the next page, measure 131, there's a long passage of fast notes that are unmeasured. So this is a bit of a different situation. And in something like this, you can sort of put the focal point wherever it makes sense physically. It'll be near the beginning of the wheel group, but we have some choice as to where to put it. I'm going to put the first one on the D in this first descending scale, and then on the B flat. The rest of them, it's going to be the note right after the change of directions. For the last example, I'm switching gears to show a different type of arpeggio. This one is primarily textural and harmonic. And again, there's going to be some choice as to where we put the focal point. It's at the end of Ravel's Jeux, where the right hand has this kind of tricky arpeggio. The intervals are pretty awkward in the arpeggio, and we also want to control the sound to get it very soft. So that's kind of a challenge, but let's see what we can do with it. The arpeggio can be thought of as two groups. There's the upper one, which has 5 notes, and then the lower one of 4 notes. In both of the groups, I think it's best to aim for the E. The lower group is 4 notes, but aiming for the E is still the best option. In measure 81, the notes are changing, but just keep following the same pattern and use the 3rd note after the change of direction. On beat 2 coming from F sharp, that means it's on C sharp. Then coming up, it's going to be on C sharp again. The one in measure 82 might be the most difficult because the interval between 4 and 3 is wider. In this one, it's important to release the fingertips so that you don't get stuck on any of these awkward intervals and you can still move your hand and arm around the figure. Then the last measure, or the second last measure, after the downward arpeggio, we're going to have both hands coming up together. If the notes are going in the same direction in 2 hands, then that means opposite direction wheel groups. So it's going over in the left hand and under in the right hand. It still works best to use a single focal point though, and I'll put it on the E. So you feel a curve around the E, which is going to unify the gesture between the 2 hands. As you can see, applying the wheel, like a lot of things in piano technique, is more of an art than a science. There is kind of a system behind it in terms of where to put the focal point and how to practice it, but it has to be applied with flexibility and intuition and musical sense. Anyway, I hope you can apply this concept to some of the music you're playing and that it helps you to feel better and sound better at the piano. Let me know what you think in the comments or if you have any questions, as always. And subscribe if you appreciate content like this and would like to see more of it. Thanks.